So hello everyone and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Chiquetta Bernard and I work for the Institute for Healthy Living and Chronic Disease Prevention at UBC Okanagan. Before we begin, I would like to respectfully acknowledge that UBC Okanagan is situated on the traditional, ancestral, and ceded territory of the Syilx, Okanagan Nation. I'd also like to acknowledge that you may be joining us today from many places near and far, and acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of those lands as well. Welcome to the 9th annual Okanagan Embrace Aging Month, and thank you for joining us today. Embrace Aging is co-hosted by the Institute for Healthy Living and Chronic Disease Prevention at UBC Okanagan, Interior Savings Credit Union, and Interior Health. We started Embrace Aging Month 9 years ago to celebrate and raise awareness about positive aging. And as you may know, we once again organized a number of educational opportunities and activities during this past month. And I hope you were able to join us for a few. The sessions are always designed for everyone, young and old alike, and focus on a variety of topics related to healthy aging and ways to improve quality of life among older adults and family caregivers. Our goal is to inspire everyone to embrace positive aging. So we do have closed captioning on the menu as part of our event. And if you don't like seeing your closed captioning box where it is, you can click and drag it, move it anywhere you would like, or you can turn your closed captioning transcript off by using the live transcript button that's on the menu bar on your screen near the bottom. We have a chat box. And so any questions and comments that you would like to pose for our panelists today, please put your questions and comments into the chat box during the presentation, and we will address them during at the end, actually. So today's presentation is brought to you by the Institute for Healthy Living and Chronic Disease Prevention. And today's session is Advanced Care Planning. Who will speak for you? Our speakers today are Patty Walker, who's a volunteer at the Central Okanagan Hospice Association, and Donna Rubadeau, who is also a volunteer at Central Okanagan Hospice Association. Donna will begin our presentation today, and with a warm welcome, Donna, there you go.
Thank you, Chiquetta. It's my pleasure to be here with you today, along with Patty Walker. Last year, Patty and I trained to help facilitate both COHA's caregiver support programs and also to assist with advanced care planning programming. We would like to congratulate COHA for celebrating 40 years of service in the Central Okanagan. During this time, COHA has provided supportive care programs and services to individuals living with a serious illness, as well as to their supporting family members. We do this through our community hospice visiting supports, wellness programs, vigil services, and providing various grief and bereavement supports. Our programs complement one's medical care when living with a serious illness or frailty, at end of life, or when receiving hospice care. Our trained, compassionate, and dedicated staff and volunteers offer emotional, social, practical, and spiritual supports through all our programs and services. All COHA services are offered at no cost, and our staff work to ensure that there are no barriers to access programs. You'll find us anywhere medical care is being provided, at home, in hospital, or long-term care facilities, and at Hospice House. This is in thanks to the generosity of our community. Today, we will be delving into the specifics of advanced care planning. The information shared today and the questions asked will hopefully set you on the road to confidently completing your own ACP. Slide, please. You will learn how to do advanced care planning by identifying what you need to talk about, who you need to talk to, and what you might want to include in your plan. You will learn about the role of the substitute decision maker and how to identify the person you want to have as yours. The information today will advise you who to discuss and share your wishes with and how to start a conversation with those individuals. And we will identify the elements of an advanced care plan and provide you with a list of resources to help ensure your success in this endeavor. This PowerPoint and a list of resources will be sent to you by email following today's presentation. And this should allow you to focus more on what you're hearing and a little less on taking notes. Slide, please. Planning for our health and personal care is one component of overall life planning, and it's just as important as financial and estate planning. With estate planning, we make wills to say what we want done with our assets when we die, and if needed, to appoint guardians to look after children. With financial planning, we save money for school, major purchases, and retirement. In addition, we might buy insurance in case something happens to us, our car or house. With personal care planning, we make preparations for day-to-day decisions regarding our living arrangements, our diet, our clothing, our socializing, maintaining cultural traditions, and so on. Planning for changes in our health is another consideration we should be making in terms of our personal care. An ACP will prepare the foundation for decisions that sometimes have to be made very quickly and in situations where we're not able to speak for ourselves. While making ACP legal documents is not mandatory, a plan can give you more control over who can speak for you and the decisions that they can make. You'll want to prepare an ACP to help you get the care that is aligned with your wishes and beliefs. Slide, please. So what is it? Advanced care planning is a process that involves thinking about and sharing with the people you trust your wishes and preferences for personal care and health care. So why would you need this? Well, an ACP helps you get the care that is aligned with your values, your preferences and wishes, and makes it so much easier for others who might have to make decisions for you when you're unable to do so for yourself. Who needs an ACP? Well, all adults 19 years and older who are capable of making healthcare decisions. All of those people should have an ACP, but especially people who have a serious illness or think their family members might have different views or beliefs from their own. Family members who don't understand or support their healthcare choices. And it's also for those who have a condition such as dementia that will lead to a loss of capacity to make decisions. Now is the time to prepare an ACP while you have the capacity to think about what you want, what's important to you, and to be able to have the conversations with those you trust. Slide, please. There are 3 simple steps to advanced care planning. Think, talk, plan. Think about what matters to you and who you could choose to be your substitute decision maker. Talk with the people close to you, including your healthcare providers. And plan by recording your wishes and preparing any legal documents. Slide, please. And if you're already thinking, uh-oh, this is going to be a lot of work, consider this. Having an advanced care plan is another way to show your family that you love them. You're providing them with a profound gift by taking away the uncertainty around your wishes during a time that could be fraught with emotion. Your plan can help reduce the chance of a family dispute or confusion about your healthcare wishes and enables your decision maker to communicate more effectively with your healthcare team. An ACP is a gift you give yourself. You can access a variety of tools to get to know yourself better and to understand what's important to you. And you will find peace of mind knowing that the people you trust are aware of your healthcare wishes and can help you get the care you want when you aren't well enough to speak for yourself. You might not have any health concerns now, but being ready in case a health crisis happens will help ease the burden on everyone. And ACP also helps people prepare themselves and the people important to them for the future. And the future, I was going to say, can be as close as tomorrow, but it could be as close as when we finish this presentation this morning. So following a short video, we will show you how to think and talk about your ACP. Video, please.
Yeah, I would guess there's a big percentage of people don't like to talk about it, and there's a big percentage of people that it happens suddenly, you never get a chance to talk about it.
Well, of course, we are from the age that things weren't talked about.
It's not part of, hey, what'd you have for supper last night?
You've got to know what to do, what you want done.
We have to talk about this. We should talk about it so that when and if this happens, you get the care that you want.
The same day I came in, they told me I had leukemia. You can't see the leukemia going away. My wife and I have talked about pretty well everything.
Well, we did talk when you were in the hospital.
Oh yeah, I guess
And you
so.
did make the decision. We've talked since then and before that a little bit.
What did I decide?
You decided that you didn't want any CPR and that you didn't want resuscitation.
I still think that.
It's very difficult for a family member to make that decision if there's been no discussion. Most of the time we wait too late. We're often in a critical situation when we're asking those questions.
So it is new to us to talk openly about private things. I think it takes a while to get comfortable because it is a privacy thing, even with your own family. It's not so simple to say what you want or what you don't want.
We're in a situation where we're having to communicate with family members about decisions to either apply or continue or withdraw life-sustaining treatments. Frequently you hear, oh, I don't know what mom would have wanted. Mom never told me, or mom never talked to me about this. And so the family then in that acute moment has to struggle with helping us make decisions with what mom would have wanted. But it's so much easier had mom communicated to her family in advance what her wishes, what her preferences, what her values and things.
And 15 years ago, people didn't talk about dying. Well,
They were still going to die.
yeah, that's true.
I do a lot of interacting with families of critically ill patients because most critically ill patients can't communicate themselves or only minimally. By and large, people are very glad. Their family members are really glad to have this on the table.
The most important person to communicate to is that person who will represent you in the event that you're unwell and not able to speak. My plan or my wishes would be that I would want this, or that I would not want that.
My wife and I have talked about pretty well everything. She knows what I want.
But the main decisions are that you've decided what you would like and not what somebody else would like.
That's right.
Particularly.
That's right. Not a fuss for one thing, not a big flurry.
And not a crisis decision.
No.
I'm certainly glad that you and I have had the discussion.
So then the kids can't say to you, what did you do that for?
Exactly. Exactly. And
Well, I didn't do it on my own. The old girls said that.
Perhaps you were able to identify with aspects of that video. It makes us aware that we do need to have these conversations now rather than trying to make decisions during a crisis situation. This is a conversation for the entire family and even, in many circumstances, for close friends. We're going to start the think process. So let's start thinking. What makes life meaningful now? What would I be willing to tolerate if I should become incapacitated? And as you read down the list on this slide, what other questions might come to mind? If you've never given thought to these types of questions, then working through the thinking portion of ACP and considering the answers to these questions can seem quite daunting. But working through questions like these and giving careful thought to the answers will give greater clarity to your plan. So this slide is very important when you embark on an ACP journey, discovering who and what matters most to you. Remember, many things give meaning in our lives, and they too can guide our end-of-life decisions. As you explore your thoughts or fears around your death, do give yourself permission and time to connect with the emotions you may be feeling. Working through exercises like these, or perhaps considering a situation you may have experienced with someone close to you, could help guide you in finding the answers to these serious questions. Slide, please. Still thinking what matters most to you? Remember, in this facet of ACP, what matters most can depend on the stage of life you're in. Activities you enjoy now might look quite different from those in a past decade and any future decade as you age or face a critical illness. So what does quality of life look like to you now? And what level of intervention would be acceptable to you at this time of your life? What's important to you to maintain your quality of life? For example, your hobbies, your religious or spiritual practices and beliefs, or your preferences for food, music, art, specific routines for personal care. Also, how do you want to be involved in your healthcare and personal care decision-making processes? For example, would you want to be fully involved in every decision or only the major ones? Or do you think these are decisions best left to others? What life support options, like receiving blood transfusions or CPR or being put on a ventilator, would you accept or refuse in cases of emergencies? And with what considerations? Often, we don't even know what treatments or interventions are even available, and we can scarcely anticipate all the scenarios of things that could happen. Do you wish to donate your organs after your death? Options might be a bit clearer when we're living with a health situation of a progressive and perhaps more predictable nature. But how many of us thought about the ramifications if we got COVID-19 and became seriously ill? As we examine an end-of-life situation, we also have to think about how would you like that experience to be for yourself and for those important to you? Consider, what does comfort mean to you? What does suffering mean to you? And what abilities or comforts would you be willing to give up in order to live longer? Figuring out the things that matter most to you takes time and energy, but it's easier to do it now than when urgent health decisions are needed or required. Slide, please. The thinking strand of your advanced care plan isn't just about major healthcare decisions. It includes personal care decisions too. So in this personal reflection, a copy of which will be sent to you in an email attachment with other information, here are some examples of decisions you might consider. And you can start by giving each of them a rating. So looking carefully at the results when you're done, notice if there are any common themes in the ratings you've given them. Will these personal choices affect your healthcare wishes and what you decide is acceptable healthcare treatments as you age or are impacted by illness? Maybe it's important to you that you die at home and be pain-free. How do you think you can achieve that? Well, in your ACP, this would need to be specified, making sure you could or would be able to be accommodated at home, and that all the medications you may require can be administered there. That's just one scenario. Completing this type of activity shows how your values, your beliefs, and wishes are woven into the choices that you make, both with your health and personal care, thereby becoming the voice of your ACP, your own ACP. And remember that that over time, as your situation changes, so might your wishes and your values. We all need to make choices that are right for us, are about us, and reflect who we are at this time in our lives. What do you think is important to you now? That might not have the same priority a year from now, but you'll need to start somewhere. So let's focus on your thoughts and your wishes at this present time. Slide, please. An ACP also helps you determine who will speak for you. Imagine if you need medical treatment and cannot provide consent for yourself. You'll need someone to express your wishes and preferences. This person is called your substitute decision maker, your SDM, and you may have more than one. Being unable to speak for yourself is a common situation, and there may be many reasons why you may not be able to speak for yourself. Perhaps before or after surgery. Maybe there's a memory loss due to progression of dementia. Perhaps you have experienced an accident or brain injury, as simple as falling off a step while entering your house and hitting your head. If your health declines rapidly due to a serious illness, again, you'll want someone to speak for you. The role of your SDM is to make health and personal care decisions on your behalf only if you are not able to make them for yourself. These can include healthcare decisions such as providing consent on medical treatments according to the wishes and instructions that you have written out, and also personal care decisions such as place of care, your nutrition, your clothing, and your hygiene. To help your substitute decision maker make the right care decisions for you, you need to share with them your personal values, beliefs, and wishes, your health and treatment preferences, your current health conditions, and what you understand of your medical treatment options. Slide, please. So let's think about who you might choose to speak and advocate for yourself. Okay, you want someone who you trust will provide consent for medical care or treatments according to your wishes. Their role is to make sure your wishes are known and honored when you can speak for yourself. So you might, if you have a pen and paper here, you might want to write down quickly who comes to your mind when you consider the questions on this slide. Let's think about what would make a good STM. Hopefully, it will be someone who knows you well. Someone who will honor your wishes and instructions, as is their legal role, even if your wishes are different from their own. Someone who's calm in a crisis. Someone who can communicate with healthcare providers and not be pressured into accepting treatment that they know you wouldn't want. And also, they can handle conflict or disagreement, especially if all the family isn't on board. So would the person whose name you wrote down meet those criteria? Patty will be speaking more about SDMs later on in this presentation. Slide, please. We are now going to share with you a video from Australia. It's called Love is Not Enough and draws attention to the value of having these conversations and thinking and deciding what medical and personal care you would want. Following the video, Patty will take you through the talk and plan components of the ACP. I'd like to remind you again that if you have questions that over time are not answered throughout the presentation, please jot them down in the chat box. Thank you.
My name is Donna, and we and I are husband and wife.
My name is Anita, and John is my dad.
My name's John. I'm Crevy's husband.
So Roy gets to go on a trip of a lifetime. Where does he want to go?
I'd say Bora Bora.
So I definitely want to go Bora Bora.
What food could Anita not live without?
Probably curry.
Anything Asian?
He couldn't live without a lot of food. And what about you? What food could you not live without?
Probably fruit in general.
Probably chocolate.
Anita asked me, so what's this about? So I don't know.
If you can think about a moment where you pushed through a hard time together, can you describe that?
At school, when she was being bullied, we had to see some counselling.
Just talking me through it and helping me get through it. Kind words and lots of hugs.
For me, it was probably the time that we were first trying to have our first child, I guess. We went through IVF and things like that. Becoming parents is something that we all hoped would come naturally, but it didn't to us initially, and we worked through that together.
Roy's hurt in a car accident. He needs a breathing tube for the rest of his life, and he'll never speak again. Would you consent to this?
Well, yeah, I would, yeah.
No, I wouldn't. Definitely not. I don't think I would want to burden anyone with that. So I'd rather not. Yeah.
Anita had 3 months to live. Treatment would give her an extra 2 months, but she would never see outside of a hospital. Would you consent to treatment?
Yes, this was a difficult one. This was 2 months, you know, it's just 1 week, 2 months, any time.
Not at all. No.
That's unexpected.
I don't want to be kept in a hospital for forever.
Donna has had a massive stroke. Does he want a feeding tube to keep him alive, even though he'll never talk again? No.
No, I don't. It's very important to me to be happy and functional in my life. No, I wouldn't want that to happen.
Roy's in the last stages of terminal cancer and his heart stopped. Does he want CPR?
Probably not. I don't think you would. No, I don't know.
So how do you both feel after answering those questions, and why?
It felt quite confronting in a way. But
You think about it and you talk about it just very lightheartedly, but I don't think anyone really puts a lot of thought and serious thought into it.
no.
Why do you think that some couples don't talk about this?
It's not a pleasant subject. I mean, nobody wants to dwell on the fact that they're going to die one day, and possibly in adverse or difficult circumstances.
So if I was to tell you that advanced care planning is essentially a conversation that helps your loved ones know what medical treatment to choose for you if you had a sudden event, what would you think about it now?
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's important, not just for yourself, but more so for your family, I think.
Definitely have to have a bit more of a talk, and it's not just about the two of us. We also have kids and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So there is a bit we need to consider. Yeah, 100%.
So what stands out for me with this video is how just thinking about something bad happening to your loved ones can be difficult and emotional. So you can imagine how hard it would be to find yourself in a position where you have to make these kinds of decisions or choices and not know what the right decision is made. The other thing that I thought relevant in this video, similar to what Donna was saying, is that you don't have to be an older person for this to be relevant. All of the people here were pretty much young people, and it also showed a father and a daughter, which indicates that that conversation is relevant for adults of all ages. So let's go get in a little bit into that talk side of things and what we mean by that. I'm just seeing if I can get the video to go. There we go. Okay. So talking. First, we need to look at the information we want to have shared with our family and friends. And that would include thoughts and decisions that you made during the phase 1 think portion of the planning process. So kind of things that you should look at talking about, things that are important to you, as Donna mentioned, your values, beliefs, and preferences, fears and concerns that you may have about your future health and illness, any specific treatments or healthcare decisions that you already know you want or that you don't want, who you'd like to have make decisions for you if you can't make those decisions yourself, and also explaining to your other family and friends how you'd like them to support the person that you've chosen to represent you when those decisions are made. As we talked about in the video, it can be a very delicate conversation, a topic for people to talk about. So how do you broach that? Here's some examples of ways that you might start that conversation that we've included here. For example, right now I'm healthy. I want to think ahead and be prepared if something unexpected should happen. And another way would be if you think about an experience or a situation that you are both aware of, that you've both gone through recently with someone else, that you can use that as a launching pad. So this example of, I was thinking about what happened to Ernie or Auntie June or whatever, and it made me realize something. Other possible ways you could look at would be starting with, I know that my health condition or illness is only going to get worse, and I want you to feel prepared and confident when you have to make healthcare decisions on my behalf. Can we talk about it? Can we talk more about it? Or another one, I think it's really important that my family and people I trust know what's important to me about my healthcare wishes as I live with this illness. So just some possible suggestions for how to broach the conversation. In order to go follow through with that conversation, it would be really helpful for you if you prepare something ahead of time in terms of how you'd like that conversation to go. One way to support that is to make notes of what you'd like to talk about. So think about who you're going to talk to and what is the key information that you would like to share with them. Why is it important for you to have this conversation with this person specifically? And what would you like to accomplish by having it? It would also be helpful to pick a time when you and the person you'd like to talk to feel relaxed and have time to talk. It's not something that can be done in the midst of, say, talking to your partner about the plan for the week and schedule that the kids have or things like that. Time that you can really devote to this kind of conversation. And similar to that, choose a place that's free from distractions and where everybody can feel comfortable. Be gentle and go slowly. Sometimes when we have things that are difficult to say, we want to just blurt them out and dive right through it and get it over with as quickly as possible. But being able to, it's difficult for people to talk about vulnerable and intimate topics. So being empathetic to the person you're sharing this information with and how they might be receiving it will help a lot in terms of making that conversation go well. And on the same token, although you're sharing your information, be open to hearing what the other person has to say as well. they might offer you a different perspective if they have different values, beliefs, or preferences than you have. And that can help inform your decisions that you make ultimately. And it also is an opportunity for you both to learn more about each other, or learn about each other better. You might not be able to cover everything in one meeting, especially if it's something that you don't usually talk about. You may want to plan for multiples, maybe start with just introducing the idea at first, and then maybe plan for other conversations where you go into more in-depth and follow up on it. There are some communication tools that can help you to support you in that work. And as Donna mentioned, we do have a handout that we'll be sending after the session. And some of them include resources that you can use yourself or share with other people. So there might be websites or leaflets or videos like the ones we've showed that could help if you want to share that with the person as well. And again, as the example that we had from the previous slide and that Donna had mentioned, if it might help to talk about situations that have happened to people that you know and compare their situation with your situation. And start by discussing the present. Don't dive straight into, if I die or when I'm near death. It can be very alarming and put people off, but kind of start with where you are now and the emphasis that living well for you includes planning well. And so planning for illness along the way is just part of that planning, as Donna had shown at the beginning. So in addition to the people that are close to you, Donna mentioned you should also talk with your healthcare providers about your advanced care plan. If you have particularly a health condition or a serious illness, you should talk to all of your healthcare providers, which would include doctors, specialists, nurse practitioners, and so on. And you want to get information from them about your health that can help you when you're thinking about what matters most to you. So some of the questions specifically that you can ask them are shown here. How do you expect my illness will progress over time? How will my abilities and my life overall be affected by this progression? What kind of healthcare treatments may be involved as my illness progresses? And what might be the benefits and risks of those treatments? Would life support treatments be considered for me during that progression? For example, will I need to be fed through a tube, hooked to a ventilator, or any other means of life support to keep me alive? So those are the kinds of information that you can receive from them. And then you want to take some time to reflect on their answers. What you learn from them is something that will help you think about your wishes and who you'd want to speak for yourself. Whether you have a health issue or not, after you've prepared your advanced care plan, or as part of preparing your advanced care plan, you should let your healthcare providers know about your beliefs, values, and wishes. So primarily in that case, so that they can understand what matters most to you when they're making their recommendations. So if they understand how important independence is for you, then they can take that factor into consideration when thinking about treatment recommendations, who your decision maker would be, so they know who that contact would be, and if there are any clear healthcare instructions that you might have currently. For example, if you feel very strongly about blood transfusions, that you would refuse to receive any blood transfusions, that's something you can share with them as well. And if you have a condition currently, it might be a good idea for you to plan for 2 meetings, not just one, and maybe one to start to get the information from them, and then the second to share your wishes and the other information we talked about. It's also an ongoing process, so talking with your healthcare professionals or providers. The questions you ask and answers you receive might change as your health changes and illness that you might have progresses. So again, preparing for the conversation will be key. It's best to prepare in advance to talking with your healthcare provider. Some of the tips, again, in preparing you to help you with this, thinking about why it's important to have the conversation, what you'd like to accomplish by having it, and which specific providers would you like to have this conversation with? Are there doctors or specialists that you're involved with, nurses, and so on? Again, writing down your questions and the topics you want to talk about will help guide that discussion. And you definitely want to make an appointment with your healthcare provider that you want to talk to and let them know your purpose of seeing them, rather than including this kind of conversation at the end of another appointment that you maybe have currently. You want to pick some times that you're feeling most capable of understanding what they have to say. So try to pick a time when you're not under significant stress or exhausted. If you can gauge that and try to work your meeting around those feelings and concerns that you have, that would be helpful for you. And also give them some information ahead of time of the topics that you want to talk about and how much time you think it's going to take, so that they make sure that they set aside enough time to properly discuss things. And again, you may need several appointments. So feel free to have further conversations if you need to down the road. And one thing that's been challenging during COVID is this notion of inviting someone you trust to participate in the conversations. If you can do that, it is something that can be very helpful, particularly if you could have someone that you would choose to be your substitute decision maker, because that will help them understand your preferences for healthcare a little bit better, and will also give them a sense of, from your doctor's perspective, what kinds of issues or decisions they might be facing down the road. They can also help you with note-taking and recording the conversation. It's very difficult sometimes to listen and follow what people are saying and also keep track of that for later. And sometimes you walk out of a meeting like this and you can't remember exactly what your doctor had said. So if you have someone who can take notes and record, and if you aren't able to take someone with you, most doctors will be quite comfortable if you ask to record. There's a Record Me app on most phones, and you can use that to record your conversation. Again, gives you an opportunity to reflect on that later. And other strategies similar to with your family, asking for a quiet room that's free of distractions, not maybe a group room where there's maybe people coming and going. You want it to be someplace that is private and that you can feel comfortable, both of you focusing on the conversation. And if necessary, maybe look at working with a language interpreter if language is a potential barrier for you. So then that's the talk side of things. I'm going to move on now then to the plan portion of advanced care planning. So in this side of it, you take the priorities and the decisions you've made in the first two stages, and we translate that into a documented advanced care plan, or ACP. So when you prepare your ACP, and as Donna mentioned, it can help you clarify in your mind, your own mind, your beliefs, values, and wishes around healthcare, and to do so when you aren't under pressure or feeling emotional, as opposed to trying to think of them at the time when there's a lot of pressure and emotion happening related to the decision. It also helps those that are involved in your care, especially your substitute decision maker, to remind them of what your wishes are, so that the conversations you've had with them, they can use that to reinforce things that you've spoken with them about. It will help guide them in the decision making that they are required to do. And it also provides evidence in case there's a disagreement, that your representative or the person speaking, substitute decision maker, is going a certain route and maybe members of your family don't agree with that. They have your advanced care plan to demonstrate that that really was what you wanted to have happen. And again, as long as you can still make your own decisions, your advanced care plan won't be used, but the documents would only come into play when you become incapable of making the decisions about your care. The language and the forms that we're referring to and that I will be talking about in a little bit are specific to BC, but and each legal jurisdiction does use slightly different terminology in documents. For example, you might hear terms such as a healthcare agent or a proxy instead of a representative or a substitute decision maker. And you also might hear living will as something that we've heard probably previously. So the terminology may be different, but the basic approach to developing a plan and documenting things would still be relevant regardless of the jurisdiction. And again, we do have information from the slides that we'll be sending you afterwards, so you don't have to keep real written notes on this. One of the resource that is available for you is a document that's prepared by the BC government, and it's called My Voice, if you can see that. And it's something that includes forms that support all of the things that I'm speaking to here now. So starting with what is in the advanced care plan one, here's a summary of what's typically included. An advanced care plan, first of all, includes a summary of your values, wishes, and beliefs about future healthcare and personal care. This is something that you can have written down. You could have a video recording of it, and it can be in various levels of detail. It can be a short paragraph. It can be a written statement. I won't go into the kinds of things to be included in there because Donna gave a pretty good summary of them. And we will also be sharing with you some examples afterwards of the written document and kinds of phrases you might want to use in that. Some of the things you want to specify in your summary. But one of the things you need this for is because it's really difficult for us to anticipate every scenario. So if your substitute decision maker understands the why and the fundamental things that you believe, your underlying beliefs and values, it gives them some guidance when they come up against situations or decisions that you may not have planned for, or you may not have taken into consideration when you were going into detail. So it gives them some context that will really help them in deciding on those types of situations. Second thing on here is contact information for your potential temporary substitute decision makers. I'm going to talk about that in a second. And there's also a couple other optional legal documents that you may wish to make or provide, such as a representation agreement, which is used to appoint one or more people known as your representatives to act as a substitute decision maker. And the second optional legal document is an advance directive. And that's a document that's used to record instructions to healthcare providers about treatments and care options that you consent to or refuse. So far when we've been talking about substitute decision maker, we've kind of been alluding to a single individual, but there's actually a few different ways that you can have decisions made on your behalf in the event you're not able to speak for yourself. So the first option is already available to you and doesn't require any decisions or any actions on your part. The second two require preparing legal documents. So the temporary substitute decision maker. If you need healthcare and you aren't capable to make the decision and you don't have a representation agreement or an advance directive that speaks to the situation at hand, then your healthcare provider will refer to a list that's established by the province of who should be consulted and in what order. And the person that they select from that list is called your temporary substitute decision maker, or TSDM. The authority for TSDM only applies to specific healthcare decisions at a time, or a healthcare decision at hand. And then if another decision is needed after that, and you're still not capable of making the decision, your healthcare provider will go back to the list again to identify a TSDM to consult with. To qualify to be a temporary substitute decision maker, a person must be at least 19 years of age or older. They have to be capable. They have to have no dispute with you, have been in contact with you in the past 12 months, and be willing to comply with their duties as a TSDM. There is still an option for them to decline if they don't feel comfortable making those decisions. Your healthcare provider will work through the list that you see here. So this is a list and the sequence that's been set out in BC law as to who would be consulted as a temporary substitute decision maker. First, they would look at your spouse, whether that be formerly married, common law, any gender. The spouse would be the first person that they would talk to. Next, they would look at your child. If there's no child, adult child to represent you, then they would go and work their way kind of down through that list until they found someone who is available and who could give them some direction as to what your decisions might be on a particular circumstance. If no one on this list is available, you see the very last one on here is a public guardian and trustee. So if no one can be reached or qualifies, someone authorized by the public guardian and trustee will be chosen. Usually an employee of that office is someone then the healthcare provider would have to reach out to. If there's more than one person in a role, they're all ranked equally. For example, if you have more than one sibling, you've got a brother and two sisters, it's not their age order or anything. They're all basically ranked equally. And your healthcare provider will typically pick whoever can be reached first. I think if there are multiple people on the scene that fall in that, I think they do try to come to a consensus, but really only one of them and whoever the healthcare provider chooses is the person that would make that decision. And so as part of your ACP documents, it's a good idea to make a list of names and contact information for all the people on there. So you've got a document that's easily referred to and available for your healthcare provider. And so again, my voice document has a number of forms, and one of them is a template for this, and you can use just to fill out your contact information. If there's someone on this list that you don't want consulted, you can identify them as ineligible on your list. So you would still name them, but instead of including contact information, you would indicate ineligible or does not qualify, some terminology like that. Your temporary substitute decision maker can only make healthcare decisions for you. They can't make personal care decisions. And some of the things that Donna mentioned, plus some additional ones, personal care decisions about your daily life, such as living arrangements, including admission to a care facility, diet and dress, and other day-to-day decisions, participation in educational, vocational, or social activities, who you have contact with, access to personal information, and any restraint issues. Those are the types of things that they wouldn't be able to make decisions on. And again, the TSDM is only selected for one decision or set of decisions at a time. So because of that, the person chosen might not be the same every time from situation to situation, depending on the eligibility and availability of the people that are on the list. If it's an extended period of time that you're looking at where you aren't capable of speaking on your own behalf. The second option for a substitute decision maker is someone you've identified in advance through a representation agreement, which is a form that's signed by you and your representative, and your signature is verified by a witness. This rep agreement is a legal document in which you name a capable adult who is referred to as your representative to make personal care and healthcare decisions if you can't make them on your own. And appointing a representative actually gives you the best chance of the person making the decisions for you being the same person over time. And many of the limitations that you see for a TSDM don't exist for a representative. For example, they can also make personal care decisions. And that's actually the only way you can appoint someone you choose to legally make those types of decisions. You can also name more than one person to act as your representative, and you can specify what decisions they can make and how they can act. For example, you can appoint one person to make personal care decisions and someone else to make healthcare decisions in the same agreement. If you do appoint two representatives, unless they have different areas of authority, they actually have to act together or unanimously unless your representation agreement says otherwise. So this is an area, it's a cautionary note around doing that. It's an area that many people kind of get hung up on. For example, if you have more than one adult child and you want them to share those decisions, the tendency for us is to appoint them jointly. But as I mentioned, then if you have two or more representatives and one is unable to act for any reason, the remaining representatives can't continue to act unless the rep agreement says otherwise. So it's a all or none kind of situation. So an alternative in that would be, a better idea maybe would be to appoint one as the main representative and one as an alternate if you don't want the situation where they have to agree on things. If you do appoint an alternate, you again must specify in the agreement when they can act in place of the representative. So you might say, you know, name this person, they're my primary representative. If they're unavailable or unwilling or unable for any reason to act, then my alternate can kick in there. And it is a legally binding agreement, but you don't need a lawyer or a notary to prepare one. There are some restrictions on who can witness it, though. The witness can't be a spouse, a parent, or a child of the representative named in the agreement. And the forms that you'll see, typically they'll ask for 2 witnesses of your signature, but if it's a lawyer or a notary public or someone like that you're getting to sign, you only need 1. You don't need a second person in that case. And the 2 witnesses do need to be present at the same time as you're signing. And to make matters just a little bit more complicated a little bit at BC, we actually have 2 different types of representation agreements with different forms to designate people under each. So the first one of these is called a Section 9 or enhanced agreement, and the second is a Section 7, which is a standard agreement. The key differences between these two, one of them is the requirement for capacity. Section 9 has to be a capable person, is only allowed to identify someone under Section 9. The scope of the health-related decisions are different as well, particularly regarding life support treatments. That's something a Section 9 and enhanced agreement covers, but not a Section 7. And also ability to make routine financial decisions. That's something that is allowed under Section 7, but not under Section 9. So ideally, what you probably would prefer or be better for you to do, because the scope of healthcare decisions for a Section 9 is broader, assuming that you're capable at the time of creating these agreements, it would probably be best to have a Section 9 representation agreement and use an enduring power of attorney for legal and financial decisions. So both the Section 9 and an enduring power of attorney require a full capacity to appoint someone. If you find yourself in, or a loved one in a situation with less than capacity and you haven't done an agreement yet at this point, you do still have the opportunity to appoint a Section 7 representative. And that will include personal care and many of your healthcare, plus routine financial and legal decisions. So kind of the difference between those 2 roles. Again, if you do decide to appoint one or more representative, it's really important that you talk to them beforehand, first to make sure that they agree to playing that role on your behalf, and also that they understand clearly what your wishes and preferences are for healthcare and personal care. And although I said that you don't have to have a lawyer to complete it, there are some circumstances you might want to consider involving a lawyer. For example, people with a diagnosis of dementia or other complex situations, it might be good to include a lawyer or notary public, especially if you have any concerns about capability, such as with progression of dementia that might be anticipated. If you anticipate family disputes over healthcare decision-making, or if you have some requirements that don't really fit in with the standard template For example, if you want multiple representatives, or if you want specific circumstances that these representatives can speak on and other circumstances for another, those might be situations that you're good to cover the bases of having a legal professional help you with that as well. So then the third option for an SDM, in this case, rather than a person, your SDM is a legal written document that records your instructions for accepting or refusing specific healthcare treatments. And that's on an advance directive. Similar to Section 9 representative or representation agreement, you do have to be capable or deemed to be capable when you're making an advance directive. And it only covers healthcare decisions, not personal care, financial, or legal. It's a really good idea to talk with your healthcare provider before you make an advance directive. It needs to be clear about the specific treatments that you want or that you would refuse. It has to be in writing, and it has to be signed, witnessed, and dated. Some of the circumstances where you might want an advance directive is if you don't have anyone to make healthcare decisions for you, if you're having difficulty coming up with someone who you could have as your representative, writing your wishes in an advance directive is a good way of covering off that. And also if you have certain instructions that you want to be legally binding or want to spare your substitute decision maker or your representative from having to make. And, you know, when you talk to your healthcare provider, we'll make sure that you understand the treatment options that are potentially ones that you would be facing, and that the directive is clear and specific, and that you understand how what you write would be interpreted, so they can help you make sure that you're using terminology that is consistent with terminology that is used by others in the healthcare sector. Again, it's hard to think of every possible decision to write in an advance directive, so it's still a good idea, if you can, to have a representative to be your voice when you aren't able to speak for yourself. If you do find yourself having both a representative agreement and an advance directive, your representative should use your advance directive to guide them when they're making their decisions. But your representative will still be asked about their decisions, even if you have an advance directive, unless you state specifically in your representation agreement that they should not be asked about decisions that are covered in your advance directive. So we covered a lot of different individuals or ways in which decisions can be made. So I'll just give you this summary that shows the priority or hierarchy for decision-making in healthcare. So again, if you're capable, you're always the first and final person to make healthcare decisions. Should that not be the situation, then your representative and your advance directive supersede the input of your temporary substitute decision maker. So the representative advance directive could override decisions that one of your TSDMs would be making instead. And also if you have, again, both a rep agreement and advance directive, your representative can veto that advance directive unless something is stated in your agreement that differs from that. So kind of to summarize the whole advanced care plan side of things, you need to include in your plan a written record or a video or audio recording of your values, beliefs, and wishes of what matters most to you. Your contact list for temporary substitute decision makers with notes about who might be ineligible. Any legal documents you choose to make, such as a rep agreement and an advance directive. There are also a couple other documents that you may come across, medical orders that your doctor may speak with you about. One of them is called a medical order for scope of treatment, which kind of describes the goals of care that you have, and if there are some specific concerns or levels of care that you want to have included in there. And also there might be no CPR medical order or no cardiopulmonary resuscitation. So those two documents are ones that you would be working with your healthcare provider, and typically those are something that they can keep on an electronic file so that all providers can access that. But it's also a good idea to keep a copy of those directives if you have them, or medical orders if you have them, with the rest of your ACP documents. And again, as I mentioned, most of those forms, the no CPR isn't on there, I believe, but I believe the medical order for scope of treatment, I think, is in the My Voice. But if not, that's something that your doctor would be able to share with you. There are, well, we will be giving you electronic links for My Voice and a bunch of other resources. There is an option open to you that the Central Okanagan Hospice Association, or COHA, has actually purchased a number of the My Voice books. So if you are, like me, more of a tangible, I'm like a hard copy kind of person, you can get copies of the books from them. You just call and go down to the office and you can pick up books from them. And again, the bottom line here is that conversations are key to the process, regardless of what you have included in your documents. And as part of that, it's all good to have a plan, but make sure that you share the plan so that everyone is aware of it who needs to be. Some ways to make sure of that is, first of all, keeping all of your documents together in a safe place where it can be easily found if needed, and be sure to tell your family where that is. And when I say a safe place, I don't mean a safe deposit box. Lots of times we think, okay, well, this is the stuff that's most important. I'll keep it in the safe deposit box. But if you are in a situation where you're in a health emergency, decisions need to be made, no one has access to that. So a better thing would be to keep those documents someplace where people can find. First responders typically know to check for those type of documents either on top of or near or in front of the fridge. So that's a place that you can store them. Make sure that you share copies with your SDM, your close family and healthcare providers. And bring the documents with you if you go to hospital. And one of the ways, if you have more than one person in your household, you and your partner also have documents, you can get colored folders at the dollar store or whatever, and you say, okay, all of my documents are in the pink folder and all of my partner's documents are in the green folder, so it's easier to grab. Make sure you don't grab the wrong one, and when you're kind of heading out the door to the hospital. There's also another way that you can have contact information available to you besides these, and that is most emergency or first responders know to look. If you ever are found and you're not responsive, you can include on your phone in your contacts as in case of emergency in your contact list, and list in there who you'd like to contact, if it be your representative, their phone number, and so on. So ICE, or in case of emergency, on your phone. And finally, advanced care planning isn't kind of a one and done. You're just like, okay, I'm done, put it on a shelf and forget about it. It's important to review it on a regular basis. Our health, illness, and treatment choices can often change over time. And as our health changes, so do decisions about what we would consider to be tolerable and intolerable could change. What might seem like an intolerable quality of life for you today, when we're looking down the road, might look more tolerable once we get in that circumstance. So reviewing it on a regular basis is a good idea. So also reviewing your ACP and other legal documents at least once a year is something we would recommend. Maybe not on your birthday, but maybe the day after your birthday, or January, or if you're like me, September kind of marks a new year. That's a good time to take a look at them. You should also take a look at your advanced care plan when you have a change in your health. For example, if you have a new diagnosis of a serious illness or a decline in your health. If your life circumstances change, for example, if you move, the person you might have had appointed was your best friend who lived down the street, and now you move to another province. So if you move, that would be a trigger. or if your relationship with your substitute decision maker has changed. For example, you might get married, get divorced, widowed, and so on. Those type of circumstances are ones that you'd want to change. Of course, try not to put it off. We always think that these kinds of decisions are something that we can deal with later. It's always too soon until it's too late. Again, the process for you to review the document that shown back here, how, think, talk, and plan is the same process that you used at the beginning. Talk about what matters most to you and who could make the decisions for you if you can't. Talk to people you trust, your representative and alternate representative, and your healthcare providers. If nothing's changed, remind them about what your wishes are and where your document's located. Good idea to make changes, like don't just change the document and initial, make a new plan, maybe revoke the one that's there, and make sure that you give copies to everyone who had copies initially, and ask them to destroy copies, or better yet, get them back to destroy them yourself. Feels overwhelming sometimes, as Donna said, this feels like a lot of work. Some ideas and suggestions we have to help you with your thought process. Talk to other people who've done advanced care plans, maybe someone, your friend, your neighbor, your relative who've done their own. What worked for them, what didn't? What are some things that you need to keep aware of? There's having conversations like this can be challenging. There are online games that you can buy that help you introduce the topic of death and illness in as fun a way, I guess, as you can. We have some resources that we can share on that in our list as well. Make sure that you give yourself time to reflect on your beliefs, values, and wishes. I think our tendency is like, okay, I'm going to go straight to the documents, assign someone, get those forms in place. Okay, that's done. But you really do need to take the time, first of all, to think about what your wishes are. And that's a really critical step to doing things, and make sure that you give yourself enough time to really tease out what matters most to you in those things. You can also, like going to the gym, have a buddy system to get or to stay motivated, break it into bite-sized pieces. You don't have to do all of this in one sitting. In fact, it probably would be impossible for you to do that. And so break it up into something that makes sense for you, and celebrate your progress and steps along the way. Just coming to this presentation today, I give you applause and kudos for doing that. It's something that many people haven't done. And so showing up is something first to celebrate. And as you work through each of the steps, definitely celebrate, and that will help keep you motivated. As I mentioned, we'll have a number of resources that are available online, publications that can help you. Many of them are BC focused, but again, they're relevant to other jurisdictions. You don't have to use all of them or go through all of them. Pick a couple that really work for you and stick with them. For me, the things that I found most helpful were the My Voice book that I mentioned that has the forms in it. And there's also a document called My Wishes, My Care, Thinking It Through. And that's something that's been provided by the BC Centre for Palliative Care, or Centre of Palliative Care. And it's a really helpful tool to walk you through that process of looking at beliefs, values, and wishes. I find that part of the process, and many people find that to be the most challenging part of this whole ACP stuff. So they ask you a number of questions that help kind of focus in on what those wishes might be. And a reminder again, COHA has copies of that My Voice book for you, and we can put contact information for COHA in the chat. It's but I'll just say the phone number quickly, and I don't know, Jaquetta, if you want to write this in or not in the text and chat, but 250-763-5511. Again, that's COHA's number, 250-763-5511, and their offices are located down near the Orchard Park Mall in Kelowna. So that is the summary of the discussion that we had around advanced care planning. I'm going to stop sharing slides now, and I'll turn it back to Jaquetta to lead us in those questions that have showed up for us.
Thank you so much, Patty and Donna, for all that, so much information to give us the start to make that difficult conversation, possibly even beginning with ourselves, I think. Yeah, so there are some questions here, and one of them I think you answered. This is what happened. I was writing notes and then you would answer the questions for me as we were going through here. So the very first question was, is the ACP same as representative agreement, which you have covered, which is underneath, but the other one is MOST, M-O-S-T, and what is that?
Yeah, so that's a medical order for scope of treatment, where we talk about what our goals of care are, and if you want things like what level of resuscitation and that sort of thing. And that's a document that's relevant in BC specifically, and it's filled out by your physician or nurse practitioner. And so that's something that can be kept on your electronic file as well. It's a different document, but it's also something kind of, I can't see it really well in there, but and that's something that you would want to attach as part of your ACP as well if you have something. It's particularly for people who have already an existing illness or progression of illness. If you're someone who is not in that situation, you're not likely to need that. But it's more like if someone who is facing that situation. And it's also something I believe that to be in palliative care and admitted into a number of the extended care homes on the provincial, they will have you complete one of those documents as part of that process. So that's how that fits in.
Thank you. Another question we have is, thank you for the most informative presentation. If possible, can you please discuss issues of estrangement between older adults and their children and how it might affect representation and decision making?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a tough situation to be in, and so you really want to make sure you give a lot of consideration to who you have as your representative, particularly if you're estranged from your children, because when you look at that list that the province has, they're really high up there in terms of who would have the say in what treatment you receive. So if you're concerned about that, definitely you want to have a representative in place, so complete a representation agreement. And it's good to be able to have that summary provided to your children, even if you're estranged from them. But if not, just make sure you've got the legal authority for the rep, and that all people know that that person is your representative. So bring that agreement with you anytime you're receiving medical. Make sure your doctor knows about it. You may also, if you don't have a representative, if you're in a situation where you're estranged from your family and you don't have somebody that you feel comfortable being your representative, then that's where the advance directive will be really helpful for you too. So you want something that's clear and legally enforceable to stand up for you, and make sure that your needs are looked at the way that you want them to be. Hopefully that answers that question a bit.
Yeah, I think so. No other questions here. There were so many things that you were mentioning. And I did actually have another question, but I got a little lost in the last thought there. Sorry, I totally forgot what I was going to mention.
So in regards to the question about the MOST and the representative agreement, if you think of your ACP as your advanced care plan, almost as a package, it's the thinking, the talking, the planning, have all those thoughts written down, and then add those other components. If you want to know CPR form, if you have a MOST, if you have your rep agreement, your substitute decision maker, your advance directive, put them all together. And I think of the ACP as an umbrella for all of it.
Yes, that's how I understand it now. So I remember the question. You mentioned that when you're trying to make your plans and getting your substitute decision maker named and maybe bring somebody to your doctor's appointments to discuss this, I actually have heard that sometimes this other person might not be allowed into some of these meetings with the doctors. Is that true?
I think it has been the case more so with COVID, where they're really trying to limit the number of people. But stand up for yourself. If you really want your representative, you said, this is my legal person. I want them to be part of these conversations. And I do have this agreement. You can push back on that. If you have that written agreement to support you, it really gives you more weight to be able to do that if you have the agreement. If you don't, if you just say, I really like my husband or my daughter to be part of this conversation, they don't have to do that necessarily. Like it's something that they've been not as comfortable doing with trying to limit people's exposure. But the rep agreement will really help you to reinforce that.
Right. So it is actually a pretty important step in the process. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't have any more questions.
I would like to reference again what Patty said about taking this in small bits. It took me months of thinking about it, ideas going around in my head, of reading copious amounts of information online, including the references that everybody will be receiving. And finally, I decided it was time to set myself a deadline. So it was going to be May 30th, which eventually became, I think, August 30th. But just start. Read through the stuff, just put something down in writing, get the documents that you need to put into your plan, and just start somewhere. And if 6 months down the road, what you've written, if you've thought more about it, and it doesn't quite express what I want, then revisit it, rework it. It will come, but it won't if you don't get something down in paper. Buy those colored folders. Then you need to fill them up.
Right. So we have done past events during Embrace Aging and estate planning. This is what it is. It's all a part of the big picture, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and kind of a way to look at the estate planning and the wills are after you die, and the healthcare representative and the power of attorney are before you are at that situation. Yeah.
But it's all putting the picture together. Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, it feels like, oh, hang on. We have one comment here. I always find it difficult to determine what end of life interventions I might want, as I need more details, but have not been able to talk with doctors that were useful.
Yeah, that is something that I hear other people say and that I found difficult as well. And one of the things that when I was looking through resources for the filling out your beliefs, values, and wishes, there are a couple of them that give, like there's My Voice talks a little bit about what some of those interventions might be. There's also one of the fellows who was in the first video we showed, Darren Hayland, he's created what he's calling, I think, the Plan Well Guide. And there's a link to that in your resources. And that actually it talks more about illness than death. And so what are some of the things, like what does it mean? What does it look like to have cardiopulmonary, like what's CPR really entail, and what are some of the other things? And so it talks more about the kinds of interventions, and it shows you video and a little bit of explanation, and I find that really helpful. And I think there's another one on, I had a note of it before, but it's around illness planning or what taking into consideration what some of those things might be when have serious illness versus death. And hopefully that will be information that will be helpful for you. I think that Interior Health even has some links to what some of the life-saving interventions, like what does it mean when we talk about resuscitation, particularly with COVID, people are really, what does it mean to have artificial machines to help you breathe? So some things on there as well.
Right. Great. Well, at this point, I'd like to say to you both, thank you very much for all the superb information that you've given us to help us move forward in making a good care plan for ourselves. And thank you very much to all of the Embrace Aging guests that we've had today. I'd like to thank everybody who's also attended past Embrace Aging events this month. We have one more day tomorrow, so I hope some people have been able to enjoy our events and activities. And yes, again, thank you, Patty, and thank you, Donna, for helping us make a good decision for us in the future.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing your time with us today.
You're very welcome. Take care. Bye.